My name is Charlotte Bennett. I was 34 years old when I learned that sometimes a person doesn't need to steal your house to try to take your place inside it. Sometimes all they need is a key. Most people think this story started the day I found myself locked out of my own bedroom. They're wrong. That was only the moment the mask finally slipped. The truth had been building for months. I just didn't realize how far someone was willing to go until she believed nobody would stop her. A few months earlier, my boyfriend, Ethan Parker, and I had bought our first home together. It wasn't perfect. Far from it. Half the rooms were still under renovation. There were unfinished walls, stacks of flooring in the garage, and more paint samples than actual furniture. But it was ours. Or at least, we believed it was. We spent nights sitting on the living room floor, eating takeout, while making plans for the future. Our son, Oliver. It was only a baby then. Every milestone felt like proof we were building something real, something permanent. Then Ethan's mother, Margaret Parker, called. She sounded upset, desperate. According to her, she and Ethan's younger sister, Sophie, had sold their house and suddenly needed a place to stay. Temporarily, just until they got back on their feet. Ethan felt guilty. I could see it immediately. Margaret knew exactly how to pull at his heart. She talked about sacrifice, about family, about how she had always been there for him. I didn't want to be the reason he said no, so I agreed. At first, everything seemed manageable. The arrangement was simple. Ethan, Oliver, and I would stay in the master bedroom. Margaret and Sophie would use the smaller bedroom, a temporary inconvenience. Nothing more. At least that was the plan. For the first week, Margaret acted grateful. Almost too grateful. She cooked dinner, complimented the house, thanked us repeatedly. But there was something underneath it, something I couldn't quite name. A look she gave me whenever Ethan wasn't paying attention. A look that always felt like an evaluation. Like she was measuring how much space I occupied in her son's life. Then Ethan left for a 2-week business trip, and everything changed. The shift happened so quickly, it almost felt rehearsed. Suddenly, Margaret stopped asking permission for anything. She started giving instructions. She criticized how I cleaned, commented on how often Oliver cried, questioned my parenting, corrected me inside my own kitchen. Every conversation carried a hidden message. You don't belong here. One afternoon, I opened the refrigerator and discovered several bags of stored breast milk missing. Margaret shrugged, said she thought they were old. The second time it happened, I knew it wasn't an accident. Sophie wasn't much better. She followed her mother's lead. Whenever something inconvenienced her, it somehow became my responsibility. She complained about Oliver's naps, complained about noise, complained about internet speed. At one point, she actually suggested that babies should have separate internet access because Oliver's monitor was apparently affecting her online classes. I stared at her. She wasn't joking. The worst part wasn't their behavior. It was the confidence behind it, as if they genuinely believed they had authority over me. Then came day 6. The day everything exploded. I had taken Oliver shopping. Nothing unusual. Just groceries and baby supplies. When I came home, I walked toward our bedroom carrying bags in both hands. I turned the handle. Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. For a moment, I thought the mechanism was stuck. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The doorknob had been replaced. The lock was different. My pulse started racing. I set the bags down. Slowly, carefully, trying to convince myself there had to be another explanation. Then Margaret appeared in the hallway. She wasn't surprised to see me. In fact, she looked prepared, almost pleased. You'll be downstairs now, she said calmly. I blinked. What? She folded her arms. Sophie needs privacy. She's preparing for college. The master bedroom makes more sense for her. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because my brain refused to process what I was hearing. She continued speaking, as if we were discussing furniture, placement. You have the baby. You can manage in the living room. Then she pointed toward the couch. She had already arranged blankets there. A little sleeping area. Like she was generously providing accommodations to a guest. That was the moment everything became clear. This wasn't about space. It wasn't about Sophie. It wasn't about college. Margaret had been waiting for Ethan to leave. Waiting for the opportunity to test how much power she could take. And she believed she had won. I should have screamed. I should have thrown the lock through a window. Instead, I smiled. A small smile. The kind that confused her. Then I nodded. Okay. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. She expected resistance. She expected tears. What she didn't expect was patience. Because there was something Margaret didn't know. Something Ethan had never bothered to mention. And when she finally learned the truth, everything she thought she controlled was going to collapse. That night, Oliver slept beside me on a narrow couch. Or at least, he tried to. The lights from the kitchen kept shining. The refrigerator hummed. Every sound felt louder. Every minute felt longer. Meanwhile, laughter drifted from upstairs. From my bedroom. At one point I heard a hairdryer. Then music. Then Sophie's voice. They weren't merely using the room. They were celebrating, as if they had conquered something. As if I had surrendered. But while they slept comfortably upstairs, I quietly started documenting everything. Photos, videos, voice recordings. Every comment. Every threat. Every lie. Margaret never noticed. People like her rarely do. They become careless when they believe they've already won. Then, 3 days later, my phone vibrated. A text message from Ethan. Landing tomorrow. A day early. Don't tell anyone. I want to surprise you. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Then I looked toward the hallway, toward the locked bedroom, toward the people who thought they were safe. For the first time all week, I smiled for real, because in less than 24 hours, they were about to discover that the storm heading toward this house wasn't me. And it was coming home early. Ethan was supposed to come home at 6 in the evening. He walked through the front door at 2:17. I was in the kitchen, with Oliver on my hip, warming leftover rice while pretending my hands weren't shaking. The sound of the key turning made my whole body freeze. For 1 second, I thought it was Margaret. Then I saw Ethan's travel bag. Then his face. He stepped inside, smiling at first. That smile disappeared almost immediately. His eyes moved across the living room. The blankets on the couch, the pillows stacked near the armrest, Oliver's bottles drying on the counter, the folded playpen shoved beside the wall. Then he looked at me. Then at Oliver. Then, toward the hallway leading to our bedroom. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He walked past me slowly, almost too calmly, and stopped in front of the bedroom door. He turned the handle, locked, his jaw tightened. Then he knocked once, hard, inside. I heard movement, a drawer closing, Sophie whispering, Margaret's voice. Sharp and panicked, Ethan knocked again. This time, he didn't wait. The door opened. Margaret stood there barefoot, wearing one of Ethan's old hoodies, like she belonged in that room more than I ever had. Her smile appeared too quickly, too brightly. Ethan. Sweetheart. We didn't expect you this early. He didn't answer. His eyes went past her. He saw Sophie's books scattered across our dresser, makeup on my nightstand, clothes on our chair, a pair of shoes in the corner. Then he turned toward me. Charlotte, he said quietly. Why is all of this here? I didn't step forward. I didn't cry. I simply said, you should ask them. Margaret's face changed. Only for a second. Then she recovered. Oh, honey. It wasn't like that. Charlotte said it was fine. She wanted Sophie to have more privacy. You know how hard school is for her. Ethan looked at me. Is that true? I shook my head. No. She told me Oliver and I could sleep downstairs. Then she changed the lock. The room went silent. Not normal silence. The kind that arrives when someone realizes a lie has no place left to hide. Ethan turned back to his mother. You changed the lock on our bedroom. Margaret tried to laugh. It came out thin. Don't make it sound dramatic. It was temporary. For whom he asked. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Then Ethan stepped into the room, walked straight to the closet, and pulled down the fireproof folder where we kept our documents, mortgage papers, insurance forms, house records, the deed. He opened it with hands that looked steady but weren't. Then he held one page up. Do you see this? Margaret stared at it. He continued, voice low. Charlotte's name is on this house. Not yours. Sophie sat on the edge of the bed, frozen. Margaret looked from the document to me, for the first time since she arrived. She looked afraid. Ethan folded the paper and placed it back in the folder. Then he said the words I had needed to hear for days. Pack your things. You're leaving tonight. No one moved, so he repeated it. Now. Margaret blinked, as if she had misunderstood. Ethan. Don't be ridiculous. This is your mother. This is family. No, he said. Family doesn't lock my girlfriend and my son out of their own bedroom. She turned toward me. Her eyes were wet now. But not with remorse. With calculation. Charlotte is twisting this. She never made me feel welcome. She acted like we were burdens from the beginning. Ethan didn't even look at me. He knew, maybe not every detail, maybe not every small cruelty, but he knew enough. He looked at Sophie. Anything in this room that doesn't belong to Charlotte. Oliver. Or me. Remove it. Sophie stood without speaking. The confidence she had carried all week vanished. She brushed past me in the hallway. Eyes down. Cheeks red. Margaret followed Ethan into the kitchen. Her voice rose. She said I had isolated him. She said I wanted control. She said Sophie was only a child. She said I was making him choose. That was when Ethan turned around. You made the choice when you changed the locks. Margaret stopped. He continued. I let you stay here because I thought you needed help. But you waited until I left. Pushed Charlotte and Oliver downstairs. And acted like this house belonged to you. His voice broke slightly on our son's name. That was the only time I saw the pain beneath his anger. By evening, Margaret and Sophie were gone. They left in silence. No apology. No goodbye. Just 2 suitcases. A few boxes. And Margaret's expression full of disbelief. As if consequences were something that happened to other people. When the door finally closed behind them, Ethan stood there for a long time. Then he turned to me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I looked at the couch, at the place where I had slept with our baby beside me, because I knew you'd come home immediately. And I needed you to see it. His face crumpled. Not dramatically, quietly, like the guilt hit too deep to show all at once. He walked over, took Oliver from my arms, and kissed his forehead. Then he carried him upstairs, back to our bedroom, back where he belonged. That night, for the first time in days, I slept in a bed again, but peace did not last. It never does when someone believes losing control is the same thing as being wronged. 2 days later, Ethan's phone rang during dinner. Margaret. He stared at the screen, then let it ring. A minute later, the text came. You've let that girl destroy this family. Your sister is crying herself to sleep. Don't expect us to forgive this. He handed me the phone. I read it once, then placed it face down. Neither of us said anything. There was nothing left to explain. But Margaret wasn't done. Within days, she began calling relatives, aunts, cousins, people Ethan barely spoke to. She told them I had manipulated him, that I had forced her and Sophie out, that we had promised them a permanent place and then abandoned them. She even claimed I was jealous of Sophie, jealous of a teenager. The first person to reach out was Ethan's cousin, Jenna. She asked carefully if it was true we had kicked them out with nowhere to go. I sent her the photos. The couch, the changed lock, Oliver asleep under a blanket, while our bedroom light glowed in the background. The video of Margaret moving my belongings into plastic bins. Jenna didn't reply for almost an hour. When she finally did, her message was simple. I knew she was lying. I'm so sorry. After that, the house became quiet, but not peaceful. Ethan moved through the days like someone carrying a weight he couldn't put down. He wasn't angry at me. He wasn't distant. But I could see the conflict in him. No matter what Margaret had done, she was still his mother. And realizing someone you love can be cruel is its own kind of grief. Then one night, he came home from work looking exhausted. She came to my office. He said, I put down the towel I was folding. Margaret. He nodded. She waited in the parking lot. My chest tightened. He said she cried. Said Sophie was falling apart. Said the apartment they found was too small. Said they couldn't afford everything. Then came the part that made the whole room feel colder. She told me I had to choose. Ethan said, her or you. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. What did you say? He looked directly at me. I told her she already made that choice when she locked you and Oliver out. Then he opened his bag and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were legal notices, boundary agreements, property warnings, documents I had not asked for. She said we made her homeless. He said, so now everything is in writing. She is not allowed back on the property. If she comes here again, we report trespassing. I stared at him, not because I doubted him, because for the first time, I understood the difference between being defended and being chosen. That night, Ethan held Oliver until he fell asleep. No phone, no distractions, just his hand resting on our son's back while the room stayed soft and quiet around us. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need Margaret humiliated. I didn't need anyone to suffer. I only needed Ethan to understand that protecting us was not betrayal. It was love. And he did. But deep down, I knew Margaret would not disappear. People like her do not accept closed doors. They look for spare keys. 3 weeks passed. On the surface, life began returning to normal. The renovations continued. Oliver started sleeping through the night more consistently. Ethan and I found ourselves laughing again. Little moments, little pieces of normal life. The kind of things that feel precious after chaos. But Margaret never truly disappeared. Even after the legal notice, even after being told to stay away, she kept telling her version of the story. According to her, I had manipulated Ethan. According to her, she was the victim. According to her, she had lost everything because of me. Every few days, another distant relative would hear some new variation of the same lie. We stopped responding. The people who mattered knew the truth. The rest could believe whatever they wanted. Eventually, the messages slowed, then stopped. For a while, silence settled over our lives. And I made the mistake of believing silence meant peace. It was a Thursday morning. Ethan had already left for work. Oliver had finally fallen asleep after a difficult night. The house was quiet. I was standing at the kitchen sink rinsing bottles when I heard something that immediately made my stomach tighten. The sound of a lock turning, not knocking, not someone trying the handle. Okay. Someone was unlocking the front door. For a second, my brain refused to process it. Then fear hit all at once. My phone was in the living room. Too far away, I stayed perfectly still, listening. The door opened slowly. Then footsteps. I moved carefully toward the kitchen entrance and looked around the corner. And there she was, Margaret, walking into the house like she owned it. Like nothing had happened. Like she had every right to be there. She glanced around casually, almost confidently, checking rooms, studying the house, making herself comfortable. She didn't notice me at first. Instead, she slipped off her shoes and started walking toward the hallway leading to our bedroom. My bedroom. Again, a chill ran through me. Not because I was surprised, because I suddenly understood something. She had never accepted reality. Not even for a second. In her mind, she still believed she belonged there. I stepped into view. You need to leave. Margaret jumped. Her eyes widened. For a brief moment, she looked genuinely startled. Then the expression disappeared, replaced by indignation. I still have a key. She snapped. This is still my home. No, I said calmly. It isn't. She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't interested. Weeks earlier, after Ethan filed the property notice, I had prepared for exactly this possibility. Something in my gut told me she wasn't finished. People who refuse boundaries rarely stop at words. Quietly, I picked up my phone, opened a draft message, and pressed send. The message went directly to Ethan. 3 words. She's here now. Margaret kept talking. Talking about family. Talking about respect. Talking about sacrifice. The same speech she always used whenever she wanted to avoid accountability, but this time, I barely heard her. Because something else suddenly clicked into place. The key. We had changed the locks twice. That meant she hadn't found an old key. She had made a copy before leaving. A secret backup. A hidden insurance policy. A way back in. The realization felt violating, like discovering someone had been keeping a window open into your life. Fortunately, Ethan and I had prepared for that possibility too. After the second lock change, we installed security cameras. One facing the driveway, one covering the front entrance. Every second of Margaret's entry was being recorded. Every step, every word, every lie she might later try to tell. Within minutes, my phone rang. Ethan, I called the police. He said immediately, Are you okay? Yes. Stay inside. Don't engage. Then he hung up. Margaret was still standing near the hallway, still trying to justify herself, still acting like she was entitled to explanations, entitled to forgiveness, entitled to access. What she never seemed to understand was that entitlement and ownership are not the same thing. 20 minutes later, police arrived. The moment she saw the patrol car, her confidence cracked. Not completely, but enough. The officers listened patiently, checked identification, reviewed the paperwork, reviewed the previous notice, reviewed the property information. Everything was straightforward. Margaret's name was nowhere on the deed, nowhere on the mortgage, nowhere on the legal documents. She had no right to be there. The lead officer remained calm, professional, firm. He explained that she had already been formally warned to stay away, that entering the property without permission was unacceptable. Margaret immediately shifted tactics. Suddenly, she wasn't angry. Suddenly, she was emotional. She claimed she had built this family, claimed she deserved respect, claimed she was being replaced. At one point, she even pointed at me. I sacrificed everything for my son. The officer simply replied, Mom, none of that changes property law. For the first time all morning, I almost smiled, because that was the problem. Wasn't it? Margaret had spent years believing emotional leverage was stronger than boundaries, stronger than facts, stronger than consequences. And now, none of it was working. She wasn't arrested that day. But she was escorted off the property, officially warned, and informed that if she returned again, the outcome would be very different. As she stood beside the patrol car, she looked back at the house. Not at Ethan, not at Oliver, not at family. At the house, the thing she had wanted control over from the beginning. And in that moment, I finally understood what had been hiding underneath everything else. It was never about a bedroom, never about Sophie, never about convenience. It was about power. The bedroom had simply been the first battle. Losing control of Ethan had been the real defeat she couldn't accept. That evening, Ethan came home early. Again, only this time, there was no confusion, no uncertainty, no questions. He hugged Oliver first, then me, and neither of us said much. We didn't need to. The security footage was sent directly to our attorney. The trespassing report was documented. A restraining order request was filed. Every loose end was tied down properly, legally, permanently. Weeks passed, then months. Margaret never returned, at least not physically. The stories continued for a while. The gossip, the accusations, the relatives who preferred drama over truth. But eventually, even those voices faded. Because lies require constant maintenance, the truth doesn't. Today, there are still people who believe her version of events, people who think I somehow took Ethan away, people who think I ruined the family. I don't argue with them. I don't defend myself. I don't need to, because I know what happened. I lived through every second of it. I remember sleeping on that couch with my baby, while strangers occupied my bedroom. I remember hearing the lock click shut. I remember the humiliation, the anger, the loneliness, but I also remember something else. I remember Ethan walking through that front door and seeing the truth with his own eyes. I remember him choosing us, not because I demanded it, not because I forced him, because it was the right thing to do. And in the end, that's what mattered. The woman who tried to push me out of my own home left with nothing she came for. Not the bedroom, not the house, not her son's loyalty, not control. All she kept was an old story that fewer people believed every year. As for us, we changed the locks. But the real victory wasn't securing the doors. It was learning exactly who deserved to walk through them.